We ready?
Yes.
And should I bang my gavel?
Yes.
Morning, everyone. Wait, it hasn't been that long a day yet. Good evening, everyone, and senior management and counselors. So we are here today for a meeting under the Planning Act, March the 11th. I have a motion before me from Councillor Trophy. Oh, I just need the one. That the agenda for the 11th of March 2019 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as circulated. Is there any changes, or is everyone good with the agenda? All those in favor? Good, thank you. Bob, you voted yes.
Yes.
So we have here, let me explain just so everybody knows about the computer talking. We have a counselor who is away on vacation, and he is Skyping into the meeting, Counselor Hildebrand. Say hi, Bob.
Good evening, folks.
Okay, there we go. Pecuniary interest, I believe. Yes, anyone with pecuniary interest to declare or general nature thereof? Seeing none, clerk, note that, please. So, we do this one now.
No, first you're going to read the opening remarks.
Okay, opening remarks, notice requirements. Planning Act requires, under sections 34 and 51, the council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on February 15th, 2019. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and the draft plan of subdivision. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table, where am I? Which we would ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision by council. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the town of Pelham to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, the person, public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or draft plan of subdivision, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. And there we go.
Okay, we'll turn the meeting over to Ms. LaRocque.
Okay, so now the first presentation will be made by Ms. LaRocque.
Good evening, Mayor Junkin and members of council. I will provide some brief background information and some policy context to go along with the applications for zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision tonight for a property located at 155 Port Robinson Road. The proposed development is going to be known as Martin's Nest. The property is located at the northwest corner of Lameti Drive and Port Robinson Road. It's approximately 0.18 hectares in size, and the proposed subdivision will consist of 6 street townhouse dwellings. The proposed street townhouse lots will front Lameti Drive and be accessed by driveways on Lameti Drive. terms of the planning policy context, according to the provincial
Excuse me,
policies.
could you increase the volume a bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
You just need
Just
to
have
speak
to
up.
speak.
It's
Just have
up-
to speak
It's
up.
up at 100% here. I just need you to speak up a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that
Thank you.
better? It's faced towards me. In terms of planning policy, the property is within a settlement area, which is where development is to be focused, and intensification is supposed to be focused to achieve complete communities. The property is located outside of the Greenbelt Plan area and the Niagara Escarpment Plan area, and so those policies do not apply. The growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe identifies the property as being within the built-up area, which is to be the focus for development and intensification in urban areas. The region's official plan designates the property built-up area. And the town's official plan designates the property as being within the East Font Hills Secondary Plan area, and it's designated medium-density residential with the presence of a highly vulnerable aquifer. The medium-density residential designation permits townhouse units, small apartment buildings, seniors housing, live-work units, and single or semi-detached dwellings to a maximum of 15% of a total dwelling unit count within a plan of subdivision. The proposed residential subdivision is not restricted by the highly vulnerable aquifer. The property is currently zoned agricultural, and the proposal is to rezone it to a site-specific residential multiple 1, which will permit the use of the property for the street townhouse dwellings. The site-specific regulations for those street townhouses are detailed in this chart. The townhouses will have a minimum corner lot frontage of 7.7 meters, a minimum lot area of 170 square meters per dwelling unit, a minimum front yard of 6 meters, a minimum exterior side yard of 6 meters, a minimum interior side yard of 0 meters where there's a common wall, and the site-specific zoning will also remove the requirement for a planting strip along the north side of the property. This slide provides a summary of the comments that we've received to date on the applications. The region has advised that they have no objections, subject to the inclusion of some conditions relating to archaeological resources. Town Public Works has requested some revisions to the design drawings and advised that payment will be required for the oversizing of the stormwater management facility and the storm sewer. Town Building has advised that building permits will be required, as well as demolition permits for the existing structures on site. Enbridge has offered no objections, subject to including standard conditions. Hydro One and Canada Post have indicated they have no comments or concerns. And in terms of public comments, we've received 2. One from Hummel Properties, who advised that they fully support this development, and another from River Realty Development. They cite they have no objections, but they request that the town include some kind of measure to ensure they aren't held liable if this development connects to the services. That relates to the fact that River Realty still owns those services. The town hasn't assumed the subdivision as of yet. This presentation provided some brief background information on the subdivision and the zoning bylaw amendment application. No recommendations or decisions are being made tonight. And if there are any questions or comments following this evening, people can reach me through the contact information on this slide.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation and opening the questions to anyone from council. No questions?
I
No.
just have one.
Councilor Trophy?
Just where it says the Department of Public Works and Utilities requests revisions to the design drawings, payment of costs for the oversizing of the stormwater management facility and storm sewer will be required. Does that mean they will be paying for those costs, or is that going to be a cost to the town?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Trophy, that's correct. It means that we would be requesting as a condition of approval of the subdivision that the developer pay those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Oh, so now we ask for comments from the public?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
You're going to put this motion in?
Okay, so we have a motion put forward by Councillor Kaur that committee receives this Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T19-01-2019 and AM-02-19 relating to Martin's Nest draft plan of subdivision, together with the Planning Department presentation, and that committee directs planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. Any debate on this motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and now you turn it over to the applicant, and the representative is Ms. Smythe.
Oh, is Ms. who?
Smythe.
Oh. So we now turn it over to the applicant to address the meeting, and it's Ms. Smythe.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Junkin, members of committee, staff, and members of public. My name is Susan Smythe. I'm the applicant. I reside in Pelham, and I'm here representing the applicant who is not here this evening, Melissa and Michael Ashcroft. Melissa Martin is her maiden name. And I am here to just kind of provide a little more information with respect to the basis of the applications. I'm not going to repeat as much information as Shannon had provided, but I'm just going to give a synopsis of a little more of the details of the development itself. With respect to the site location, as indicated, it is actually one of the original agricultural parcels here along Port Robinson Road, who was owned by Mr. Martin. It was there for over 60 years, and he had passed in 2016. That piece of property then was given down to his daughter, Melissa, and in recent months, or I should say a year now, considering the redevelopment in East Font Hill, herself and her husband decided to develop the property in her father's honor. Hence Martin's Nest as being the subdivision. As noted, the site is located in the East Font Hill Secondary Plan area. More notably, this site is actually located at the entrance off of Port Robinson Road, heading into the Mountain View Homes River Estate subdivision. Currently still under construction. So the redevelopment of the site would align and essentially complement with the new builds in that subdivision. The site has approximately 33.17 meters, 108.8 feet frontage on Port Robinson Road, and 53.43 meters, 175.28 feet frontage on Lametti Drive. The total lot area of the site is approximately 0.18 hectares, 0.44 acres. And in order to facilitate the development and utilize the site to the maximum, some of the existing trees, as shown in the drawing here, will likely have to be removed. However, through detailed design, every effort will be tried to try to salvage as many trees as possible. This slide just is to represent the existing and adjacent uses to the property. Primarily, it's low to medium density residential. So again, the redevelopment of this site will be complementary to what's already existing in the area. The site is also located close to two elementary schools, St. Alex, Highway 20 and Station, and then Glenny Green just west along Port Robinson Road. The site is also very close to the Steve Bauer Trail and close to the new community center as well as the commercial plaza. With respect to planning details, again, it's designated as medium density residential, which does permit townhouse units. The zoning classification is agricultural. It is outdated. It does not conform to the current official plan policies, therefore requiring the amendment for residential, and we're going with site-specific to a multiple residential. The density target under the OP policies is 20 to 60 units per hectare. We're providing a range of 33 units per hectare, so we're within that threshold. This site is an excellent opportunity for an infill and intensification to utilize the site within the urban settlement boundary, as well as the existing infrastructure. With respect to the infrastructure, that being water sanitary, there will be an opportunity to connect to and we understand that the town has not yet assumed the newly constructed infrastructure on Lameti, but there is enough capacity for our development to connect into it. So there, as Shannon had mentioned, there may be the likelihood of having a clause put into the subdivision agreement to state that. With respect to stormwater drainage of the site, we will be able to provide swales and catch basins with it outletting to the storm sewers on Port Robinson Road as well as on Lameti Drive. With respect to the East Fawn Hill urban guidelines, we will be working towards attaining those guidelines and designing architecturally the units to fit within what is being currently constructed. As noted by Shannon as well, the proposed development, does conform and is consistent with both the provincial, regional, and local policies for compact built form, providing a mix of housing, as well as moving towards attaining a density target, the minimum density target. Again, we're here tonight to discuss the requirements for two planning applications, one being the zoning amendment to change from agricultural to site-specific residential, and another application for draft plan of subdivision, thereby allowing for the lots and units to be separated or independent separate ownership. Now specifically for design considerations. Every effort has been made so that we can properly site and mass the townhouse units, that being proposed to a single and a half, 1.5 story type of unit. So again, blends well with what's existing and is currently being built. Although, again, we're not into the specific detailed design stage, architectural details for the units will be a major focus to ensure that they align with the current development trends with both the building materials and colors. The garages on the units will be recessed, therefore allowing for a greater front yard to provide for green space and adequate landscaping. The entrances into the unit will be a focal point, creating an environment feature to the units. If we can, we may look at opportunities to provide porches if space is available, just providing a little bit more variety and interest along the street face on Lameti. We will definitely provide more facade enhancements and treatments on Unit 1, which will be the end unit on Port Robinson Road and Lameti. So that's the entrance into the subdivision. With respect to utilities, we will try to design it such that they are not viewing to the general public. So we'll try to make sure that they're screened from public view. With respect to the site plan, this one here that you see is slightly modified to that of what was in the current package, as well as this matrix is a little different than what Shannon had proposed. And I'm just going to highlight the differences. We received comments from the agencies and staff just prior, a week and a half ago. So we were able to look at the site plan and make some minor modification. That specifically being the, originally it was the removal of the landscape strip to the north. So if you look, it says the existing residential to the north of our site. So again, originally it was eliminated, but with some modifications and looking at where the proposed swales will be, we were actually able to reinstate the 1.5 meter, which is a requirement under the residential multiple buffer strip. So that is reinstated, so now we do comply to that requirement. So there will be no reduction for that. With respect to the minimum corner lot frontage, Shannon had indicated a request for 7.7 meters. On our matrix, we had identified that we comply. I think, and it was not intentional, I think there's just the misinterpretation of definitions and or specific zoning provisions. So we will definitely have a discussion back on that matter. So the reason why we had indicated that it complied is that we measured the frontage, and particularly we're looking at reference to Unit 1. And we were looking at, so the front face of Unit 1, and then carrying it along to the side, which reaches to the property limits along Port Robinson Road. So we had identified greater than 14 meters, which is the requirement. Obviously, it's not the same as town planning staff, so we will definitely go back and have that discussion. Another, I think, misinterpretation with respect to interior side yard is that it was 0, and I can understand why, that 0 setback for the internal units. But if you make reference to interior side yard, that being, say, the entire building itself with the whole 6 units, we do meet that 3 meter requirement setback. We are 4 meters plus. And lastly, with respect to minimum lot area, the town had indicated 170 meters square per dwelling unit. However, our calculations is a lot greater than that. So that's something I think we'll have to go back with staff to get an understanding on how they got that calculation versus what we arrived at. So again, we'll have some discussions and see, in fact, really what we're coming forward with a reduction. Right now, I can definitely guarantee that the requested reduction from the RM1 zone is the reduction of the minimum front yard of 7.5 to 6. So that is correct. And the minimum exterior side yard, which is supposed to be 7.5 meters. And again, we are requesting the 6 meters. And I believe that just concludes my presentation. Again, just to reiterate, this development does conform to provincial, regional, local policies. The application, again, requires council approval. And the condition of draft plan approval, again, is likely to enter into an agreement, and any other clauses deemed necessary by external agencies. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll open up questions from anyone on council. Oh, Council Core.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. In your plans, the fencing on, I presume, on the west side, is it going to be uniform right across? Like,
Yes, likely it will be.
and I presume on the north end too. So you're going to be providing that, so the residents are not going to have different fencing?
Correct. Well, we'll likely have to have a discussion with the residents to the north, but it is the intent that this particular development will have fencing along the perimeter.
So the neighbors on the future residents are not going to have a white fence, a blue fence, or it's all going to be one wooden fence or
I would
whatever?
believe so. I would think it'd probably be worthwhile for them to get together to have that discussion up front. So
Okay,
there's-
you're saying the residents, or through you, Mr. Mayor, or are you going to provide that as the developer?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the developer will likely have to have that discussion with the adjacent developers or property owners to see what is the best way about going about. It does not make sense to have different color fencing or different fencing treatments. So they'll definitely likely have to have a discussion up front.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, you didn't talk about, you're going to have to demolish the existing home. You
That
didn't
is
say
correct.
anything in your presentation, or maybe I wasn't paying attention.
No, well, Shannon did allude to that, so correct, through you, Mr. Mayor. We will require a demolition permit of the existing dwelling and any sheds that are on the site for the purposes of this development.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. I thank you. We have a motion put forward by Councillor Hahn that committee receive the presentation material submitted by the applicant for information as it pertains to file 26T-01-2019 and AM-02-19. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we reach out to the public. If there's anyone here who would like to speak on the what was presented tonight, now is your time to come forward and voice your opinions. Not, oh, I wasn't quite fast enough. Bill?
Hill,
Bill, welcome.
thank you. Just looking at this just quickly right now, my concern would be, number one, parking. So close proximity to Port Robinson Road, which is a main thoroughfare. You don't park on Port Robinson Road. And proximity to the corner there for snow, where are you going to put the snow? There's no room. So, and then it'd be basically access, because that's a main entrance going up or Robinson going north. If that area is congested now when you see parking, because I've gone to the MCC up that street quite often, and there's often parking in front of that showroom house right on the corner. And you go and it's limited access, so trucks can't turn in there. Oftentimes somebody's waiting. So accessibility is going to be an issue you got to look at. You're putting from one house now, access off of Port Robinson Road, to 6 houses within 150 feet.
Yeah. So perhaps we'll have the planning director or the Ms. Luak. Do you want to address address those issues, or does the parking conform to our bylaws?
Just one of them comment in terms of what's the standard requirement. I can't believe how many of the parameters have gone to 0 in terms of separation, and that they dropped it down to more than half of what the standard is. So everything is just piled in. You've gone from a single unit to 6 units on 1 acre, less than a half an acre of land. So they're maximizing density to increase taxes and income from the site development, but they're not looking at what it's going to do to that area for accessibility.
Thank you. I don't know not much of planning, but I do know that the provincial density has gone up substantially, and I believe she said that the density here is 33
units?
33 units. And, yes, and we'll have the planning assistant comment on the parking.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the parking, the development does meet the requirements under the zoning bylaw. There are going to be 2 parking spaces provided per dwelling unit, 1 in the garage, 1 in the driveway. The zoning actually requires 1 per unit. Also, the driveways are going to be coupled together so that there will be the allowance for some on-street parking on Lametti Drive.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, I believe the resident made a concern about snow removal. Is that, does that fit into the parameters of the planning department through, perhaps the director of planning can help us out?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. Certainly, those are things that we take a look at, as well as Public Works in the review of this application and coming forward with a recommendation to you. With respect to snow removal, and there's adequate space for snow removal, there's adequate maneuverability and distance for the movement of vehicles through that intersection as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, anyone else have any thoughts they want to present? Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you for your input. And now we will have the committee input on this. Oh, so now back to council.
Yeah, if there are any
Yeah,
questions.
any,
by members.
so does council have any other comments to make on this presentation?
Yes, through you, Mr. So these will be through you, Mr. Mayor, these will be 2-story townhomes?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the applicant indicated that there'll be a single story and a story and a half, so that the end units will likely be single story, and then the middle units will be a story and a half.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, would there be a possibility, or with Airbnbs or in-law suites, are they allowed to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the zoning bylaw amendment does not contemplate a second dwelling unit in these townhouse units.
And through you again, Mr. Mayor, are the roofs, I presume the roofs are all going to be connected?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the roofs are all connected. The dividing wall between the units is a connecting wall as well that meets fire code and building code requirements for separation of units. So yes, it will be connected, as pretty typical for townhouses.
Thank you. Is that all, council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so that covers the committee comments.
That's correct. So the public meeting on this application is concluded, and we'll move on to the next one. I'll get the presentation prepared.
So this public meeting on this application has been fulfilled,
I'm
and
just going to get you to do one.
we will now move on to application number 2.
Yep, I'll just get you to receive Mr. Heska's.
Oh, okay. That's just a minute, please. Do I have to read this?
It's a motion to
Oh,
receive
okay.
the information
Okay,
from Mr.
yep.
Heska.
A motion put forward by Councillor Wink that committee receive the information presented by members of the public relating to the subject applications as follows. A1, Mr. William Heska. All those in favor? All those opposed? None. Motion carries. And now we go on to, oh, never mind, go for another reading first. Planning Act requires under Section 34 that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on February 15th, 2019. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table, which we would ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision by council. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the town of Pelham to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, the person/public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. Thank you. And now to Ms. LeBlanc for her next presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This presentation will provide some brief background information on the application for zoning bylaw amendment in the River Estates Phase 2 subdivision. The proposed zoning change pertains to a portion of the draft-approved River Estates Phase 2 subdivision. The River Estates Phase 2 subdivision property is located between Summersides Boulevard, Port Robinson Road, west of Lametti Drive. The zoning change applies to the very northwest corner of this property, which you can see on this slide. While working through the conditions of draft plan approval with the developer, planning staff noted that the proposed laneway that you can see here on the draft plan was going to be directly abutting a future road that will connect Summersides Boulevard and Port Robinson Road. And based on that, staff suggested that the plan be changed to avoid that duplication of roadways and also to make better use of the land. And so planning staff requested that the developer change the draft plan. And that unfortunately resulted in the need to change the zoning. And that's why we're here tonight. According to the provincial policy statement, this property is within a settlement area. It's outside of the Greenbelt Plan and the Niagara Escarpment Plan areas, and it's within a built-up area in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Built-up areas are to be the focus of development and intensification in urban areas. In the region's official plan, similar to the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, the lands are designated built-up area and designated greenfield area. In the town's official plan, the property is located within the East Swan Hill Secondary Plan area, and it's designated low-density residential and medium-density residential with the presence of the highly vulnerable aquifer. The low-density residential designation permits single detached and townhouse units to a maximum of 60% of the total dwelling units in a plan of subdivision, and the medium-density residential designation permits townhouse units, small apartment buildings, seniors housing, live-work units, and single or semi-detached dwellings to a maximum of 15% of dwelling units within a subdivision. The proposed use of the property is not restricted by the highly vulnerable aquifer. In the town's zoning bylaw, the way the previous bylaw was drawn, this former laneway piece was still zoned agricultural, and it would be going to a site-specific residential multiple 1. And these are the site-specific provisions that go with that site-specific residential multiple 1. These are the same zoning provisions that are applied to all of the street townhouses that front on Summersides Boulevard within the River Estates Phase 2 draft approved subdivision. So it will be consistent with those. At the time this presentation was prepared, no comments had been received. But since that time, we've received notice from the region that they have no objections and they'll be collecting waste on Summersides Boulevard. In terms of the site-specific zoning regulations, this one lot will have a minimum lot frontage of 6 meters. It is a corner lot, so it will actually be 7.5 meters. A minimum lot area of 170 square meters per dwelling unit, a minimum front yard of 4.5 meters, a minimum exterior side yard of 3 meters, a minimum interior side yard of 0 meters because it's a common wall, and ingress and egress will occur from the rear lane, so that's access to driveways and garages. The garages will be located in the rear yard with a minimum setback of 0.5 meter, and the garages have a 0 meter interior side yard setback. They share a masonry wall on one side, and they have a minimum side yard setback of 2.4 meters on the other side. Further, in terms of comments, planning staff met with public works staff and fire prior to requesting the developer modify the plan, and no objections were indicated. This presentation provided some information for council in terms of the zoning bylaw amendment. No recommendations or decisions are being made tonight. And any questions or comments on this application can be directed to myself.
Thank you. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The previous application said they were going to pay for the drainage runoff. There's nothing mentioned about that in this application.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Corr. Well, this subdivision has already been draft approved, and that condition was included as a condition of draft plan approval. This application tonight is only related to the zoning, so that's for the specific permitted use on that specific small piece of the property.
And through you again, Mr. Mayor. Is there any services already in ground there, or just empty land?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Corr. I believe the services are installed on Summersides. The remainder of the subdivision needs to be serviced.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, they would tap into Summerside or Port Robinson Road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Weens can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they connect right into the services on Summersides.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the townhouse dwellings that will front and face on Summersides will connect to services on Summersides. The internal street that will be developed is an extension of services through the River Estates Phase 1 subdivision.
Thank you. Is that all, Councillor? Councillor?
And through, yes, through you, are we locking in, and I'm looking at this 92 portion of land, are we going to be locking in that with all the development in there? In your display, I think it's page, I don't see a page here.
7.
That
Page
one?
7, yeah. See, is that a lot 92? I see it RM1 92. Is that going to be locked in? Excuse me, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, through you, that's a lot that fronts and faces and has frontage on Station Street, the RM1 -92. That's a property that has a site-specific residential multiple zone. It has frontage on Station Street. This is the extension of the River Estates Phase 2 subdivision. It will not provide for any landlocked parcels, but it will continue to provide street access. Shannon, if you want to go to the subdivision plan. So there's this subdivision plan. So you'll see that it's providing for a street C, and that will be a future street. And then Street B will also provide for the opportunity for through connection into some of those other lands that remain undeveloped at this point in time. So we're not creating any landlocked parcels, but we will be providing opportunities for street connections and a road pattern. And this road pattern is certainly consistent with what was in the demonstration plans for East Fonthill.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, most of the people will be driving on Port Robinson Road then? Or would they be using Summerside? So we are going to increase the traffic flow on Port Robinson Road.
So both Port Robinson Road and Summersides Boulevard are considered to be collector streets. And then the new streets are what we refer to as local streets. The connector street systems do carry higher volumes of traffic than the local streets, but there are the areas where they provide for the opportunities to connect through to other streets. And when Street C gets connected, you can see there on the plan that it will connect through to Summersides, again providing opportunities to move traffic and disperse traffic so it's not all using one street. But we do have to wait until those lands come on stream for development, but there is a very interconnected street pattern proposed in the East Fonthill that will help take traffic off of and disperse traffic through the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else? Any comments? Not seeing any. Thank you for the presentation. Motion put forward by Counselor Stewart that committee receives this Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file number AM-03-19 relating to River Estates Phase 2 draft plan of subdivision, together with the Planning Department presentation, and that committee directs planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Now we go to the public?
No, we're going to see if anyone is representing the applicant
Oh.
before you go to the public.
Okay, and before we go to the public, is there anyone here representing the applicant who wants to make a presentation? And seeing none,
Now you go to the public.
then we go to the public. And anyone in the public that wishes to comment on this application? Going once, going twice. Okay, that's now, let it be noted that no one from the public spoke against it. And now we come back to the committee. Is there anyone on the committee who perhaps would like a last chance to speak on this? And seeing none, I'll put my glasses back on. And Councillor Wink has brought a motion that the special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. All those in favor? All those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And just for the heck of it, meeting's over. So now we will have a 5-minute recess, and then we will continue on with the committee of the whole meeting. That was recess, wasn't it? No?
It's a brand new meeting.
Oh, it's a brand new meeting, committee of the whole, March 11th. 5-minute recess.
Nancy, I'm gonna call in with another laptop.
Okay.